Alright, so we are back and we are gonna start building our front end. This will not be that complicated. I will still try my best to explain as we go through the code. So let's go to our desktop where I initiated my project. And what was our project called again? Do app, and we already have our back end. So now it's time to create our front end. Clear this. By the way, the create React app is deprecated, so we will be creating a Next.js application. You just run this command and then just wait for it. In this step, you are just gonna enter Y and then proceed. My internet is acting out. I ran the command again, and I will just press enter here. Tailwind CSS, sure. You like sure. No. I'm just gonna press enter. So these are all the basic, the default settings, and I'm just gonna wait for it again. So there you go. It created the front end directory, and let's just check. Okay, cd front end. I'm gonna open all of these in using cursor. By the way, I used cursor even though I said I will be using VS Code. Okay, we have these files. Let me see if it's big enough. That's what she said. Before we move on, I'm gonna install some dependencies. So you don't need to really use Axios. I just used Axios for simplicity. And you will see later on why I'm gonna use Axios. So I'm gonna install these dependencies. So I made a mistake, guys. Please don't follow me. Oh my god. So I was not inside the front end. Alright, so I'm inside the front end now, and I'm gonna install dependencies. I'm just gonna check here. We have Tailwind, do we have Lucid? I think it changed, so it has Lucid now. Axios should have Axios now. Okay, so I'm just gonna make all the folders here. May 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna make 4 folders for now. So inside the front end, directly inside the front end directory, I'm gonna make a components folder. Just click package.json or any of these files here, and then just new folder, live. What other folder? Pages. So we are gonna use pages in this Next.js app, and then of course types. Right. And while we are at types, let's just make the types file and name it to do the TS, not TSX, just TS for our types. And for our types, we have these. And if you look at it side by side with what we have on our back end, it's the name of our. So here we are just recreating what our back end needs, what type our back end needs. The pedantic models, right? So this to do here, class to do, is this. What does our to do model need? ID, title, description, completed, created at. We just translate it to a TypeScript type or interface on our front end. And the to do update here, title, description, completed. Here they could be null, so they could be null here. So these 3 fields here can be null. So that's why we have the question mark after the name of the field here. Yeah, it could be undefined. And if we hover here on the question mark or the variable, it says it can be string, null, or undefined. Pieces of code here, these types or interface, are just from the pedantic models. Since if you remember, these models are the models that we are gonna be following when we pass data from front end to back end. And TypeScript is also very strict on the types, so it's a good thing. So that's it for our types, and let's go to our lib. We are gonna make the code to call our API. I'm just creating the type, and the API, the TS. Since the backend is really fresh for you, these are the files that relate closely to the backend. And I just pasted this code here, all of these. So our API.ts file, we are going to be using Axios, and we are also going to be importing Axios response from Axios. And we are gonna import the types that we have created. And in this part process.env.next public API URL is gonna be useful when we publish our application. Obviously, we are gonna be using this one, the localhost 8000, since we are gonna be running the backend locally. We can set this value. This has no value, which right now is the case. Then we are just gonna use our localhost. So don't worry about this. I'm sure we are gonna use this later on. But for now, I'm gonna proceed through my code. So in this part, we are creating an Axios instance. We are just gonna pass the API base URL, and we are gonna define the headers. For now, we just want the content type to be JSON. So this is one of the things why I love Axios. So what does it do? Catches all responses and errors before they call my code. And I don't need to handle, for example, here we have a get to do, create to do. I don't have to handle the error handling for each function here. So this is an easy way to centralize error handling. So I'm gonna move on to our main API calls here. If you notice, these are just our endpoints, right? These are just the endpoints that we have on our backend. So we create an asynchronous function for each one of them. So these are our wrapper functions around Axios calls. I'm gonna explain what this means. So the get to do's, it will be the name of the function. The async here is needed since API calls are asynchronous when we are calling our backend. And this promise to do here, it means that we are expecting a promise, and that promise will contain a list of to do's. So don't get confused here. The to do here is from our type here, the type file here. So it's gonna be a list of those to do. And then this is the definition of the function of our get to do's. So we have a variable called res, and the keyword await here is also important since we are calling our backend. The await here and the async means when we call our backend, it will not be instant. It will take some time. So we are always gonna be using async and await, at least in our application right now. So the API here is this one, our Axios instance. It's created this once, and we can use that instance over and over again here. Since our get to do's is a get method, so here it says get and expect a list of to do. What is the endpoint? To do's. Here, if you can imagine it, our API base URL should be this right now since we are developing locally. And it will just append it here actually. So it will just add this after this since we have set the base URL inside our API. That's basically it. You just call it like that. Please don't forget about the types and the async and the await. And we will return the data part of it. Since the data will contain the actual response from the backend, the response object will be like this so that you can imagine it. Let's say this is a JSON, right? So we have our data here, for example, and we can also have a status here and headers, config, and any other fields there, but we only want the data part of it. Our get to do here, I'll just place it side by side, backend side by side here. So our get to do's here, this correlates with this one. Our get to do here, if you remember, is looking for a specific to do task. So it needs to have an argument here, the ID. So if you take a look at our backend code again, it will take a to do ID as a path parameter. So that's why we need to ask for an ID when we want to call this function. If we want to use this function on our front end, since we are gonna call it this way. So this will just be added to our base URL. So this is called template literal. Instead of using single quotes or double quotes, you use backticks. And then an interpolation here, which is signified by a $sign and curly braces, and you place the name of the variable inside this curly braces. And again, we get the to-do type, since it's just one to-do. For the create to-do and update to-do, we just pass in the to-do data, since our post method or the create here will accept the to-do create as part of the response body here. So this is how you pass in a response body. Take a look at it. API.post, and then specify the type it should return, and then we call the endpoint here, just like here. And it's so easy to write. And we pass the body, the to-do data, which is of type create to-do data here. So that is how you pass the request body. Still the same thing here on the update one, but we just need the ID and the update data here, right? The data. Since looking at our backend, it also needs a to-do ID. So it has a reference of what we want to change, and then the fields that we want to change, or the data that we want to change here, which is the update data. The delete to do, it will just ask for the ID here, calling the delete method. By the way, the update will use the put method, and the health check here, the last function that we have created. We also created an API function for that, and the structure is just like this: status and string, the name of the field, and the type of the value. And in our delete also, if you remember, it will just return a message here. So yeah, message and then a string. I think we have our API calls and the types already done. So I'm gonna split it into two parts. Again, the front end one, I don't know if it's 2 parts or 3 parts, but I guess this is too much to take. And then if we move on to the front end, it's gonna jumble your mind a bit, since we are adding a different concept. I'm not saying that you won't get it. It's just that when I first started programming, I took it concept by concept. So that is why I have these videos split into parts, which I think, in my opinion, is the best way for beginners to learn. You don't bombard them with information. You take it one step at a time. So these are files that we have created. Today, we have created our front-end directory. We have initialized our front-end directory. And we have created the API functions. These API functions are what we are gonna call if we want our backend to do something. So I think this ends the episode. And in the next one, we are gonna get started with the front end and create the components. So I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye for now.